The sky above the prison world was always red, red like dried blood. Red like the warning lights that flashed before something terrible happened. She crouched low behind the broken rocks, her breathing shallow. Her dark purple skin shimmered under. The twin suns, covered in dust, bruises, and dried blood. Her leg was injured, cut deep from the crash, and she could barely move. She listened. There were footsteps, not alien, not her people, heavy, solid. Human, her. 3 hearts beat. Faster. Her mother had warned her about them. Everyone did. Back home, they called humans the mouthwalkers, creatures who didn't need claws because their teeth were enough, who smiled before they attacked, who spoke soft lies and then skinned you. Alive. She had never seen one with her own eyes, until now. The steps were getting closer. Boots scraping over rock. She pressed a hand over her mouth to hold back a scream, and then he appeared. He wasn't like the stories. Not hairy like a beast, not red-eyed, not fanged. Just a mon. In strange armor, with tired eyes and a strange device in one hand blinking softly. He looked right at her. She froze. He raised a hand slowly, not in anger, not holding a weapon. Just a hand. She stared at it. Was this the moment he'd lunge, tear into her? Did he smile before every kill? But he didn't smile. His face was calm, maybe even worried. She pressed back, her injured leg slipping on the sand. She gasped. He knelt down, slow, careful, like he didn't want to scare her. And then, to her shock, he placed something gently on the ground. A bottle, clear water, clean, she hadn't tasted. Clean water in days. Her throat burned, her lips were cracked. Her pride said no, but her body screamed yes. Still, she didn't move. He spoke then. She couldn't understand the words, but the voice wasn't angry. It was low, soft, almost kind. She blinked. Humans weren't supposed to sound like that. He pushed the bottle a little closer, and backed away. Slowly, painfully, she crawled forward and snatched it. She sniffed it first, then drank. The water was cold. Real. Life. She didn't even notice she had tears in her eyes when she looked up. He was still there, watching, not blinking. She shook her head, confused. What was this? Was it some game before the hunt? Or, he reached out slowly again, but not to touch her. He pulled out a small medical kit, opened it, showed her the tools inside. A scan light, bandages, antiseptic. He pointed to her leg. She bared her teeth. No, she whispered in her language, voice hoarse. You'll poison me, of course. He didn't understand. But he didn't move either. Instead, he took off one of his gloves, held up his own hand, cut it with his knife, not deep but enough to draw blood. She gasped. What was he doing? Poured the same medicine from the kit on his own wound, then looked at her. Again, he wasn't trying to hurt her. He was showing her it was safe. She didn't know what to think. Why would a monster do that? Her stomach growled. He opened a silver packet, pulled out some kind of dry, brown square. Food? He broke it in half, offered it to her. She took it slowly, still watching his every move. It tasted strange, salty, sweet, dense, but it filled her belly. And he didn't try to kill her. That night, she fell asleep behind the rock, still clutching the half-eaten ration bar. The human didn't tie her up, didn't stand guard over her. He just sat nearby, humming to himself, staring up at the red sky. She dreamed of her people that night, of the camp where she was born, of the stories they told. But when she awoke, she didn't feel fear. She felt confused. She limped a little closer to where he was resting. Her leg was still throbbing. She needed help. She didn't want to admit it, but it was true. He looked up at her and smiled. A small smile. Not cruel. Not sharp, just human. She panicked and grabbed a rock, ready to defend herself. But he didn't flinch. He didn't move. He simply reached out again, this time holding a bandage. Her hands trembled. This isn't real. This had to be a trap. Humans don't save the weak. Humans don't help others. They conquer, they eat, they destroy. So why was he helping? Why hadn't he killed her? Why did her heart, her 3 trembling hearts, feel less afraid now? She let him touch her leg, just once, just to clean the wound, and she watched his hands, steady, gentle, caring. He didn't speak, just worked. Her leg with care. When he was done, he looked her in the eye and whispered something. She didn't understand, but somehow, she felt the meaning. You're safe now. And before she could respond, before she could even process it, darkness took her. She collapsed into unconsciousness, and the monster caught her before she hit the ground. Asterisk, she woke up to the sound of fire, not screaming, not gunfire, just the soft crackle of burning wood. The cave ceiling above her was low and jagged, glowing orange from the small campfire. Her body ached. Her leg felt stiff, but no longer wet with blood. Something smelled warm, not metal, not fear. Food. She blinked, slowly, then saw him, the human, sitting on the other side of the fire, not watching her, just poking the fire with a metal stick. Calm, silent. Like he didn't just save the life of someone who'd been taught to fear him since birth. Her breath caught. She sat up quickly and winced. Her leg was wrapped tightly in clean bandages. Her ankle rested on some folded cloth for support. He touched me. Her instinct screamed. She should attack, run, spit. Something, but her body was too weak, and he hadn't harmed her. Not yet. He turned his head slightly and noticed she was awake. No sudden moves. Grin. Just a nod. Then he did something that confused her even more. He looked away, as if to say, "You're safe to move." What kind of hunter gives the prey freedom? She studied him. The helmet was off now, showing his face clearly, not like the painted devils in her tribe's old stories. He looked tired. His skin was rough, sun-kissed with faint scars. Not young, not old. A soldier's face, maybe even a father's. He held out a small metal dish. Something steamed inside. He pointed to it and then slid it across the stone floor to her. She didn't touch it. He leaned back, took his own dish and ate. He didn't force her, didn't smile, didn't even look at her again, and that scared her. More than any weapon, monsters don't act like this. She reached for the dish, hand shaking. Smelled it. It was bland but not poisonous. It tasted like thick root mash, heavy, filling. She ate, not because she trusted him, because she needed to live. He made a soft sound approval, maybe then tossed her a thin blanket. She caught it. Without thinking, that was when she noticed something else. Her knife, it lay beside her. Not broken, not taken. He left it with me. That made no sense. She could kill him in his sleep. Her hand moved toward it, not to use it, just to feel that power again, to feel control. He didn't react. He just spoke something in his strange language and turned over to sleep. Back facing her, her heart raced. Was this a test? A trap? She held the knife tightly, crept closer, one silent step at a time. Every instinct told her, do it. Strike, survive, flee. She raised the blade, stood over him. The fire flickered behind her. He didn't move, didn't even reach for the weapon beside him. Her hand shook. She had killed before, enemies, strangers, traitors, but this was different. He had fed her, saved her. Why? Tears stung her eyes. Her people had left her to die. This monster had not. She lowered the knife, slowly, backed away, curled up against the wall of the cave, blade still in hand. But heart full of questions, the fire crackled again. In her world, mercy was weakness, but here in this cave, the monster had shown her something stronger than fear, kindness. The next morning, she was already awake when he stirred. She had the knife in her lap, but not pointed at him. When he looked at her, there was no fear in his eyes, no anger. Just a silent question, will you stay or will you run? She didn't answer. She just handed him the knife. Handle first. He blinked, took it slowly, studied her face, and for the first time, She smiled. Not fully, just a flicker. He smiled back. Not the sharp-toothed grin her nightmares had imagined. Just smile. Warm. Real. She spoke in her language, even though he wouldn't understand. I don't trust you. I trust you more than them. He tilted his head and said something back. One word, one human word. But it echoed inside her like thunder. Friend. Her breath caught. She didn't know what it meant exactly, but it sounded nothing like hunter. Nothing like carnivore. And in that cave, with the fire warming their faces and the stars blinking outside, for the first time in her life, she believed that maybe humans weren't monsters. The wind on the prison world didn't whisper, it screamed. High above the black cliffs, acid clouds circled like hungry birds. Lightning cracked through the orange sky. It was the kind of weather that peeled skin from bone. The human stood at the cave entrance, silent, scanning the land with his visor. The alien girl limped beside him, wrapped in his spare cloak. One arm still sore but healed enough to walk. She followed his gaze. Endless dead land. Burned trees, shattered metal husks, the ruins of old war machines that had fallen from the sky years ago. She spoke quietly in her own language. Only fools walk this land. He looked at her, then pointed ahead. She understood his meaning. We must go. His distress beacon was weak, power running low. If they didn't reach higher ground before the storm swallowed the canyon, no one would ever find them. She sighed and nodded. The trek began. For hours they walked through bone-dry valleys and cracked stone fields. The human let her lean on him when her leg began to throb. He didn't speak much, only scanned the path ahead, alert like a soldier. Every step was pain for her, but she didn't complain, not once. Because when he looked back, just to check on her, she felt stronger. They came to a broken bridge once. A mining track now, nothing more than a stretch of steel bones over a black ravine. He paused, looked it over, then carefully stepped across first, testing the strength that groaned under his weight but held. He reached the other side and motioned. For her to follow, she hesitated. The drop below was endless. Sharp rocks. Death, her foot slipped. On the first beam, she froze. He noticed, without thinking. He stepped back onto the bridge and reached out his hand. Again with the hand, she thought. Always reaching. Her people never offered hands, only commands. She took it together. They crossed. That night they camped near an old wreckage ship's skeleton, long dead. Half buried in sand, the human made a fire from broken wiring and crystal. Roots. She watched him work, admiring how his hands never trembled. Even in the cold, he handed her food again. She took it this time without fear. While they ate, she pointed to herself and said her name slowly so he could repeat it. He tried. Mispronounced it. She laughed. Then she pointed to him. He answered with his name. It was short, hard. She tried to say it failed. He laughed that night. He fell asleep under the twisted ribs of the old ship. Two enemies sleeping like family. The next day, danger. Returned, they were walking through a salt flat when the sand beneath them shifted. The girl shouted, "Stop." But it was too late. The human dropped down into a hidden pit. She ran to the edge and looked down. He had fallen 10 feet. Damned. His arm was bent strangely, broken. She panicked. She couldn't lift him. Alone, he was too heavy. But she tried. She climbed down, wrapped his arm, tore strips from her cloak to tie it. He gritted his teeth but didn't scream. When she looked into his eyes, she saw pain, not fear, never fear. Together slowly, painfully, they climbed out. For the first time, she was the one, helping him walk by dusk. Wild shadows moved in the dust. They weren't alone anymore. Eyes watched from the ridge's creatures, long dash-legged, thin-bodied scavengers. With glassy eyes and teeth like glass shards, the human raised his weapon. She held a broken pipe ready to fight too, but they were too many. The creatures circled, snarled. Then one pounced. He pushed her aside. It landed on Him claws tore at his armor. She screamed and leapt forward, smashing the pipe into its skull. Another one came. She stabbed with a broken piece of metal. He fired once, twice. The others scattered. It was over. She was shaking, but not with fear. With rage, she grabbed his arm. "Why did you protect me?" He looked at her like the answer was simple. Then he said the word again. Friend. That night, while patching his wounds, she thought about her people again. Would they have saved her like this? Would they have bled for her? She doubted it. Maybe the monsters weren't the humans. Maybe they were the ones who ran when things got hard. The ones who left the weak behind. The ones who called his kindness a weakness. She looked at the human's injured arm, his bruised face, his tired eyes, and for the first time in her life, she whispered in his language, broken but true friend. He smiled, not wide, not scary, just proud, and that's when she realized this trek wasn't just through it. Dead land, it was through her old fears, and with every step beside him, she was leaving those fears behind. Asterisk, the nights on the prison planet were colder than ice, even under 2 blankets. Her alien skin felt like stone. Fire cracked low beside her, casting soft light on the human's face. He was asleep finally, his chest rising slow, arms still injured, face covered in dirt and old bruises. She didn't sleep. She watched him, not in fear, but in wonder. She whispered, "What are you?" Her people had called humans wild things, uncontrolled and dangerous. But this human, this man, he bled to save her. Ate after feeding her, slept after watching over her. Who does that? In her world, warriors protected only their rank.
Greatness
Was a trap. She leaned back against the cold rock wall and stared at the stars through the broken ceiling of the cave they found. One star blinked bright, then disappeared. She gasped quietly. Not a star, a ship. She knew that kind of blink. A patrol jump. Someone was scanning the area, probably hers. Maybe they'd finally found her. She should have felt relief, but all she felt was dread. That night, she couldn't stop thinking. What if they came? What if they took her back? What if they saw the human beside her? Would they ask questions? Would they give her a chance to speak? No, they'd shoot first. Say he corrupted her, called her weak for being saved by a so-called monster. She sat near the fire and looked at him again. He murmured something in his sleep. A name, a soft one. She wondered who it was. A child, a wife, a comrade lost in war. Her people never spoke in sleep. They feared showing feelings. But this man didn't fear that. He felt openly that made her chest tight. And for the first time in her life, she did something strange. She sang softly, an old tune from her childhood. Barely a whisper. Her voice cracked, rough from dust, but she remembered the words. A lullaby from her mother. Before the wars, before the lies, the human stirred, opened one eye, listened, didn't interrupt, just listened. When she stopped, he said one word, beautiful. She frowned. What? He pointed to his ear, then gently to his heart, then gave her a thumbs up. She didn't know the gesture, but somehow she understood. Her cheeks flushed dark violet. No one had ever called her voice anything but noise. And now, being she feared days ago, had called it beautiful. Later that night, he showed her something, a small device, flickering old, a hologram. He tapped it, and an image appeared. A human girl. Maybe 6 years old, smiling, missing a tooth, holding a teddy bear. He pointed to the child. Then to his chest, he tapped his own heart, then lowered his head. She understood. Gone. War took her. She whispered, I'm sorry, knowing he couldn't understand her words. But maybe he felt them. He wiped his face, not a soldier now, just a father, broken, alone like her. She reached out and touched his shoulder, not for balance, not for help, just to let him know. I feel it too, before dawn. Noise echoed in the valley. Low hum machines. The human jumped up, weapon in hand. She felt it in her spine, the vibration of alien ships. Hers. They were here. He looked at her, not angry, not accusing, just ready. Like he knew this would happen. He handed her his only working sidearm. She looked at it, stunned. "You're giving me this?" He nodded. "Why?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just said her name perfectly, this time, and turned away to scout the ridge. She stared at the weapon. He trusted her more than her people ever had. And now, the question boiled in her chest. Whose side am I on? The air shifted. Not just the wind, the atmosphere itself felt different, pressured, heavy, like the world was holding its breath. She stood frozen behind a jagged ridge, her eyes on the horizon, and then she saw them. 3 ships, dark, silent, floating low like shadows with wings. Her people, her flacked her blood. The ships hovered above the valley like judgment from the skies. Red lights blinked under their bellies, scanning the surface. One beam passed over the human beside her. He raised his weapon. She stepped in front of him. "No," she said in her language. "Don't shoot." He didn't understand her words, but he understood her eyes. He lowered the weapon. Minutes later, the ground trembled as the ships landed. Ramp, doors hissed open. Armored feet hit the dirt. She saw familiar symbols on their armor. Her clan, her command. The elite unit, cold, ruthless, and loyal only to the bloodline. One of the soldiers recognized her instantly. They raised their rifle, then paused, target alive. The soldier reported through their come retrieve. A woman stepped off the lead ship, eyes sharp as knives. Voice smooth like poison, Commander Via. Her aunt cold, proud, terrifying. She stared at the alien girl and said flatly, "You survived." No smile, no welcome, just those 2 words. Then her eyes drifted to the human and narrowed. "What is that?" The girl hesitated. "He helped me." The commander's lips curled in disgust. "A human helped you. He saved my life." "No, he manipulated you. That's what they do. They twist the weak." She stepped closer. "He is the reason you were left behind. They lured you into a trap, and now you defend the creature that trapped you." She turned to her soldiers. "Seize it." The human raised his weapon. They raised. 10! Before anything could happen, the girl shouted, "Stop!" The soldiers froze. Even the commander raised an eyebrow. She stepped forward and stood in front of the human. Gasps echoed across the landing site. Commander Via's voice dropped. "Quiet, dangerous? You stand between your own people and the enemy?" "He is not the enemy," she said, louder now. "He is the reason I'm alive. He gave me food. He carried me when I couldn't walk. He fought beside me when wild creatures attacked, because he needs a hostage," Via snapped. "No, because he's not a monster. We're the ones who left our own wounded to die." Silence then. Via raised her hand. "Prove your loyalty." The girl froze. "What?" "Kill him now, or you die with him." The human didn't move, didn't beg, didn't speak. He just looked at her. His expression said it all. "If this is the end, I'm glad it was with you." Tears welled in her eyes. She reached slowly for the weapon at her side, her fingers curled around. The grip. The soldiers watched. Commander Via watched. Even the human didn't flinch. She lifted the weapon, aimed it right. Between his eyes, her hand trembled. The wind howled, and then she spun the weapon and shot her own commander in the shoulder. Panic erupted. One soldier rushed her. The human fired, took him down. Another fired at them both. She tackled him, disarming him with a knee to the jaw. Chaos exploded. Smoke, screams, sparks from weapons. Clashing against armor, she and the human fought back, to dash back, 2 against many, but the rage in her chest was fire. She wasn't defending just herself. She was defending what she had become. Not a loyal soldier of silence, but someone with choice. They made it to the human's beacon, just as the last flare of sunset faded. He hit the activation switch. The sky answered with a soft blue pulse. A signal. Hope, but more ships would come soon. from both sides, and there would be no turning back. She dropped beside him behind the rocks, breathing hard. His face was bruised. They both were shaking. He looked at her, still silent, still steady. She whispered, "You still trust me?" He smiled. He didn't say yes. He didn't need to. She leaned against him as the night swallowed the battlefield. Somewhere behind them, smoke of betrayal still rose. But ahead, a new future waited. Together, the forest was burning behind them. Flames chased their shadows as they ran through ash-covered paths, stumbling over roots and broken stone. Smoke stung their eyes, and the air was thick with heat and war cries. She gritted her teeth and pushed forward, helping the human lean on her. His side was bleeding from a laser burn. He had protected her again, even after being betrayed by her people. She didn't understand him. She didn't have to anymore, because she had made her choice. The beacon signal they'd launched was working just barely. A human rescue craft had responded, but it couldn't land nearby. The only clear spot was an old satellite station half a ridge away, and that meant they had to climb. Her legs still ached. His ribs were cracked. But they kept moving, step by step, together behind them. Via soldiers were closing in. They were fast, armored, and furious. "She's a traitor," one of them shouted. "Bring the human's head." The words made her run faster. Not out of fear, out of rage. They reached the ridge just as another blast lit up the sky behind them. One soldier had caught up. He leaped from a ledge, landing in front of them with a plasma blade. The girl didn't hesitate. She charged. The soldier slashed at her, but she ducked, spun, and drove a rock-hard elbow into his throat. As he staggered, the human swung a metal rod into his helmet, sending him tumbling off the cliffside. Silence followed. For a second, they stood there, two broken bodies, refusing to fall. Then she whispered, "Let's go." They reached the station, or what was left of it. Half buried in vines, the old building groaned in the wind. Most of the walls were collapsed. The antenna was still standing, barely and blinking blue. It was enough. The human opened the main hatch and pulled her inside. She collapsed against the wall, coughing hard. He locked the door behind them and slid down beside her. Neither spoke for a moment, only the sound of breathing. Fire crackling in the distance. Boots pounding the ground. Far below, he reached for his pack, pulled out a med stick and tried to patch her arm. She pushed his hand away gently. "You're hurt worse," he shrugged. "Always quiet, always calm." She picked up the med kit and worked on his ribs. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from how close she'd come to losing him. "You should have left me," she whispered. He looked at her, surprised. "You could have escaped." He tilted his head, then placed his hand over hers. He didn't need words. She understood. Suddenly, loud clang echoed through the station. They had been found. An explosion rocked the door. One more blast and they'd be inside. She looked at the human, then at the antenna tower beside them. One of them had to climb and connect the final flare signal. Only then would the rescue ship see them. But it was exposed. No cover. Whoever climbed it wouldn't survive long. The human stood up, grabbed the flare pack she stood up to. "No." He paused. She shook her head. "You saved me too many times." She stepped toward the ladder, but he stopped her, held her face gently, looked into her eyes, then nodded once and ran. She screamed his name, finally speaking it clearly, but he didn't stop. He climbed fast, wounded and limping, but determined. Blaster shots tore through the walls. The soldiers burst in. She fought them. Every punch, every swing, fueled by rage, by loyalty, by love. Above, he reached the top of the tower, plugged in the flare. Device raised the signal. Blue light shot into the sky, a beacon of hope, a promise. And then a shot rang out. She looked up. He staggered, fell, but caught himself on the railing, bleeding, barely holding on. The signal was sent, but he was falling. She rushed to the ladder, heart pounding. The remaining soldiers turned their weapons on her before they could fire. A roar shook the sky, a human gunship, descending like a burning comet, blasting the ridge with its cannons. The soldiers scattered, retreating. Diving for cover, the girl climbed the ladder, 2 steps at a time, ignoring the pain. She reached the top just as the gunship's spotlight hit the tower, and there he was, still holding on. Barely, she grabbed his arm. He looked at her, smiling weakly. "I told you," she whispered. "You're not dying without me." He laughed, the first time since they met, and together they climbed into the rescue craft inside the ship as the medics worked on him. And she sat beside him, holding his hand. The pilot asked, "What happened down there?" She didn't answer at first. Then she looked at the human and said, "He came to save me. And I saved him back." The stars looked different from inside the human ship. They weren't cold anymore. They shimmered, alive, warm. She sat in a small seat near the medical bay, arms wrapped around her knees, cloak dusty, face still marked with ash and blood. The ship hummed gently as it flew toward the nearest human outpost. Across from her, he lay in a stasis bed, silent, breathing slowly, his injuries wrapped tight. His face looked peaceful. She hadn't left his side since they left the planet. Not once. Young human officer stepped into the room. He glanced at her with suspicion. His hand rested on his weapon, though he didn't raise it. "You're the alien he risked his life for?" She didn't answer. The officer scoffed. "You must have tricked him somehow." Her eyes flashed. She stood, walked up to him, then, without blinking, said the one word the human taught her clearly. "Friend." He stared at her. Stunned, her voice didn't shake, her back didn't bend. She meant it. He said nothing more and walked away. Hours later, the ship landed at the outpost, a clean metallic base floating in the edge of a nebula.
Humans in uniform
Lined the docking bay. Doctors rushed in with stretchers. They lifted the injured soldier gently. Guiding his stasis pod out of the ship, the alien girl followed closely. The guard stopped her at the gate. She froze. The med officer spoke, only humans allowed past this point. She looked back at the man who had saved her life. Her fists clenched. But before she could speak, someone shouted from the platform above, "Let her through." A tall officer walked forward, sharp eyes, silver in his beard, command in his voice. "She's under his protection," he said. "She's earned her place here." The guard stepped back, and for the first time ever, she was welcomed. They gave her a room, small but clean. They gave her food, strange but warm. They gave her a translator chip. And finally, words were no longer barriers. 3 days passed. He didn't wake. Doctors said his body needed time. She waited outside the med chamber, day and night. One nurse asked, "Why do you care so much?" She stared out the window and answered quietly, "Because he cared when no one else did." On the 4th day, he opened his eyes. She rushed in. He looked at her, dazed, then smiled. Weak, but real. "You made it," he whispered. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "You too." He reached for her hand. She took it this time without fear, without doubt. With all her heart. Weeks passed. She trained with the humans, learned their systems, taught them about her people, strengths, their lies, their ways. One day, during a mission briefing, a young recruit pointed at her and asked, "Is she even one of us?" Before anyone else could speak, the commander said, "She is now." The others turned to look at her, and no one argued. Later, she stood alone in front of a mirror. Her reflection was strange. Her eyes were still her own. Her skin still shimmered with soft violet tones. But something had changed. Inside, she had seen mercy from a monster. She had found strength in being saved. She had chosen her own path. Her people once called humans carnivores. Now, they would call her a traitor. But the humans, they called her something else. Human. Not by blood, but by heart. One evening, as she sat beside the soldier under the stars, He handed her something. A patch. His old unit's emblem. Wear it, he said. She blinked. Why? He looked at her eyes, full of quiet pride. Because you earned it more than most. She stared at the patch, then nodded. She pinned it to her chest. A symbol of a war, of survival, of friendship, and of becoming something new. Far away. Her homeworld would one day learn of what happened. They would whisper her name with hatred, with shame, but some, the quiet, the forgotten, the left behind, would hear her story and wonder, what if they were wrong about the monsters? And high, above, among the stars, two former enemies flew side by side, no longer alien to each other, but bonded by fire, and by the truth that saved them. Kindness is the greatest power of all.